Welcome to the Women on Fire podcast. We're on a mission to help you have your best menopause and rest of your life. I'm your host, Jenna Moore. I'm an integrative health and menopause coach, and I've studied nutritional awareness, women's hormones through a functional medicine lens, and explored various modalities, including breathwork, mindset, and positive psychology. Join me and my guests as we discuss how to navigate the natural life transition of menopause and growing older, from waistlines, waning libidos, and what to wear now we're over 40. We discuss it all. Women on Fire is sponsored by MenoMe, a New Zealand-based company by women for women. MenoMe specialises in evidence-based, all-natural supplements to support you through every stage of menopause. My guest today is Judy Bailey ONZM. For many New Zealanders, Judy is a household name. Perhaps if you're elsewhere, to put in context, Kerri-Anne Kennerley in Australia or Diane Sawyer in America. Originally, Judy trained as a journalist, and she went on to become an immensely popular newsreader for primetime news for many, many years. Fondly nicknamed Mother of the Nation and often dubbed a national treasure, Judy's now in her 70s and has written a book, Evolving, Finding Health and Happiness as We Age. Evolving is peppered with Judy's own personal stories, as well as the latest findings in science of growing older. It serves as a brilliant toolkit for anyone entering midlife and beyond. Actually, from your 30s and beyond, I would say. It covers everything to do with health and well-being in 2 parts. So from nutrition and exercise to dementia, grief, resilience, death. Judy covers it all, both the good and the bad, including those things that we just don't want to talk about, but we really should. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Judy. Thank you so much for joining us today at Women on Fire to talk about your book.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it's great to have it finally out there.
Yes, because they are a labour of love, aren't they?
They absolutely are. Yes, it did. It took me a while.
How long?
Probably about 3 years. Yeah, all up. A lot of research and then the actual writing. And I'm not terribly disciplined about sitting down and applying myself to these things. So, yeah, I'm a typical journalist. Work to a deadline. Leave everything till the last minute. So yeah, but I've so enjoyed it.
Oh,
It's
that's so
been a
good.
voyage of discovery, really, for me.
I was thinking it would be a story about your own personal life, which certainly is still in there, but it's more like a toolkit, a handbook, isn't it?
Yeah, I felt like I wanted to write something that would be useful, for people, and for myself as well, because I'd often been told, in rather gloomy tones, that old age wasn't for sissies, and I felt like I needed to find out how best to navigate this time in my life. And I thought that there probably are universal things that I could share with other people. So yeah, that's what it's been, really. It's part autobiographical. There are quite a few kind of personal anecdotes in there from my own experiences, and from my husband's experiences as well. And a lot of kind of practical stuff that I've discovered along the way. Yeah.
And Evolving's such a good name, isn't it?
Isn't it? I stole it. I stole it from Serena Williams. I remember seeing an interview with her, and she was similarly disenchanted with the idea of retirement. Because, when you look up retirement in the dictionary, it says to withdraw or go to bed. And I just think, it's such a passive word, isn't it? I really don't like it. And so she said that she rather thought of it as evolving. And I thought, yes, it
Yeah.
is. That's what we're doing. We're growing all the time and
Mm,
changing. And
mm,
there's a huge amount of change that you need to navigate as you get older.
mm,
Um, Physical changes, of course, but
mm,
mental changes as well. If you, for instance, have been defined by your job for your whole life, really, um, then you can somehow lose track of who you are, really. And I think that kind of that sudden shift from working 24/7, which most of us seem to do these days, to not. It's a hard change for most people. Mm.
it is, and that's probably why statistically, don't isn't it? It's more males though, I think, isn't it? When they retire, like quite often they can,
Drop
um,
dead.
yes, that sounds terrible, doesn't it?
No,
Thank you for saying it.
it's a myth. It's a myth. So I'm reliably informed. Yeah.
Right.
No,
Mm,
it's but I think they lose themselves,
yeah. Mm,
particularly men, because they don't have the social con- contacts in the community that women seem to have, no matter how busy they are. They
mm,
seem to form those relationships that really scaffold you, I think,
mm,
as you age.
mm.
Um, and that's what the Harvard study of adult development has found, which is the most remarkable study. You know about it?
I wanted to ask you about it because I hadn't heard of it before I read your book. And
Oh,
that's amazing. It's gone for 85 years and
yes,
it's still going. Yeah.
yes. It's the longest running longitudinal study of adult development in the world. Started in the 30s, and with a group of undergraduate Harvard guys. But they also included a group of people from inner city Boston. So it's not all about, wealthy white dudes. It's a really broadly based study. And they have found that the most profoundly protective thing that you can do for yourself um, in order to age well is to foster connections with other people. It's all about relationship and having warm, nurturing relationships around you, which is a salutary lesson for us all as we tend to kind of be too busy to catch up with friends, or it's just too hard or whatever. And I think that those relationships are really what are going to see us through life.
It's
Mm,
a it's a big lesson, isn't it? Because I know in the book you've got it in two parts, right? You've got part one, which is health, which the things like nutrition, exercise, etc., etc.
mm,
Then part two, which you've called well-being, and there is so much, such as relationships, and
mm.
I'd love to dive into all this as well. But I think a lot of people don't put a lot of these things under the health and well-being umbrella.
No, that's interesting, isn't it?
Mm,
Um, it's such a holistic thing, you know, and the Maori way of looking at health is a holistic way. We can learn an awful lot from this, I think. So they look at the spiritual, the mental, the physical, and the family, and they're the kind of whare tapawha. And it's it's about building your foundations from the ground up, and including all those things to nurture yourself along the way. Yeah.
Ancient wisdom.
It is ancient wisdom, and we do
Mm,
well to take note.
mm. Blend ancient wisdom with modern science,
Mm,
I always think. And in there too, and this is at part one of health, you talk about dementia, right,
mm,
which is it's a hugely global issue and it's growing. And there's a neuroscientist, Dr. Lisa Mosconi, that does a lot of work with the link, because we do work with menopause, with the link between dementia, and under that term comes Alzheimer's, as you know,
mm,
and women in menopause. And 2 out of 3 Alzheimer's patients are women. And I know men aren't, you know, they're still very vulnerable. My dad had
mm.
dementia, and it is heartbreaking because I think your mother had it
Yes, she
too.
did. Yeah, it is heartbreaking.
Mm,
And yeah, it's the scariest thing, I think. As you age, you begin to think about these things. And particularly if you've had a relative who's had dementia, you think, well, is it genetic? Is this my future? But they do say that genes are responsible for only 7% of that. So it's more about lifestyle, um, and stress. And Sir Richard Fall, who is a legend in brain neuroscience, he says that what is good for the heart is good for the brain.
mm,
So that's a really good rule to live by, really, I think.
mm.
The other thing is staying on top of your hearing,
Right.
because hearing has a strong correlation with dementia, hearing loss. So 80% of dementia sufferers have hearing loss.
That's
Um,
huge.
yeah, it is huge, and I think it's probably the link is not socializing, you know, because socializing is really important as well. There go the relationships again.
Yes.
Um, and When you can't hear, it's really hard to socialize. You find yourself avoiding crowds or noisy restaurants or whatever, you know. So you
Mm.
tend to withdraw a bit from relationships.
It's a big
Mm,
thing, isn't it? And it's something to be, because I know a lot of women, just circling back to menopause for a minute, I know when they start having perimenopause symptoms, they are fearful that they have early onset dementia, you
mm.
know, and it is frightening, isn't it?
Yes,
Because,
you think your mind is going, don't you? You
mm,
get things, and yes, get hot and
mm,
bothered.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, oh, you're a patron of hospice, aren't you, and the
Yes.
grief
Yeah.
centre?
Yeah.
And I think these things are, you know, death and grief and the paperwork involved in that are very important to talk about. And you tackle those in your book, don't you?
Yes, I did, because when my dad died first, and that was the first death that I had to kind of cope with the nuts and bolts of it, you know, organizing the funeral and getting the paperwork sorted. And I just didn't know where to start.
No.
Um, and I found it really daunting, because all I wanted to do was grieve for him.
Mm.
And um, and I found myself sort of immersed in this mess of bureaucracy and whatnot. So I think it's helpful to know about those things. Um, and grief has been something that I've been interested in for a long time. um, Through hospice, really. I came in touch with a hospice nurse who was doing a lot of counselling for families at the hospice, and she introduced me to the idea of grief counselling. And so that's how I became involved with the Grief Centre as well, because grief can really affect your whole life if you don't come to terms with it. If you can't, not, I don't want to say move on, but be a resilient griever, which is what Dr. Lucy Hone calls
Mm.
it. And I think she's so right. There are ways to help yourself and others. So it's really important to share that knowledge, I think.
We do need to be resilient in this
Mm.
life, don't we? Mm.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's been another one of the really interesting things about relationship. Builds resilience. So I've also been involved with the Brainwave Trust, Aotearoa, and that is an organization that brings the latest research in neuroscience to people who work with children and young families. And what that science is telling us is that relationships are more important than we ever believed possible, because they literally trigger connections in a baby's brain that begin to build pathways that allow a child to feel empathy and to concentrate, to feel remorse, all those things that go towards building a capable, contributing human being. And so, yeah, relationships are fundamental to our well-being, really.
Isn't that a big message? That's a huge message, isn't
Mm,
it?
it is. It really is. But I think that that's a message that's finally starting to percolate through,
Mm.
and
Mm.
it's not just airy fairy kind of muesli munching liberal um, health speak or whatever.
Now you've got very long-term relationships, don't you? And
Yes,
you've been married to Chris for 50 years?
52 years
It's such a
thereabouts, I
long
think.
time.
I was a child bride, Jenna. I love to say. Yes.
Amazing. How old
Well,
were you? You
I
must
was
have met
20,
him.
well, I was
Wow.
18 when we met, and we
Uh-huh.
decided to get married 3 weeks after we'd met. It's ridiculous, really. But it's such a lottery, isn't it? Really,
Yes.
a
Yeah.
relationship. You just plunge in, and we were madly in love, and so my parents were horrified. And they told us to go away and wait for a year, and so we did. And then yeah, very shortly after I turned 20, we were married.
Well, clearly you got it right. Or you did something
Yeah,
right.
mostly we think. I think, or we're laughing about it with a friend the other day, and she said, well, clearly you both haven't wanted to kill each other at the same time. And I think that's probably what it is.
What's the secret? Apart from
Well,
not
he
wanting to kill
always
each
says,
other at the same time.
yeah, he always says tolerance. Yeah, tolerance, I think. And I think he's right. It's, if nobody is perfect, and we've all had our ups and downs in
Yeah.
relationships, and they're never all, roses. But yeah, we really do love each other, and I think that's the main thing.
That's so beautiful because he was in broadcasting as well, wasn't he?
Yes,
On
he
the other
was.
side.
He's
Mm.
a producer and director.
Wow.
Um, so he understood me very well and my insecurities, and he was always my staunchest supporter, and has been all the time. Really, I'm so lucky. He's been there. I've been agonizing over this book, and I'd finally finish a chapter, and I'd give it to him and say, here, what do you think of this? and he's always got something constructive and, useful to say. So I've been, really blessed.
We need that, don't we?
Oh,
We need
absolutely.
that feedback.
Mm.
Um, and you've been through a challenge. You're in an ongoing challenge with Chris, though, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Um, with something that we all need awareness of. We do get told about
Melanoma.
it. Your melanoma.
Mm, absolutely, yeah. We're of that generation that used to kind of slather on the coconut oil and fry ourselves in the sun for a tan, because a tan was always, a healthy thing to have.
Mm,
But as skin specialists have told me, a tan is just a scar.
yes.
So yeah, it's that so frightening, so frightening for us both when he was diagnosed with melanoma, and it was a deep one. It had gone a long way, and it was just a tiny little red lump on his arm. But so he gets 3 monthly checks,
Wow. Did
and
it change? Is that why he went to see
it was
about
just
it?
a little lump, just wouldn't go away, and in fact, actually, it did go away, and we thought, oh look, we don't need to bother you with this, and fortunately, our skin check guy, Chris Boberg, said to us, look, no, we should have a look at it. Let's check it out, and there it was.
And do you find that it sort of alters the way you view life or perhaps your
Uh,
plans or mm,
um, I think we're just grateful for every day,
mm,
that we spend together.
mm.
Um, yeah, we really are. So we were very, very lucky.
You've had a monumental career, haven't you? Like, how long were you actually reading the primetime news? Or the news overall, actually, because you worked with John Hawkesby, didn't you?
Yes, I did through the regional news days.
Mm,
Um, I started on Top Half in 1980, which was the Auckland Regional News. And I finished, my last bulletin was for One Network News, One News as it was, and that was in 2005. I don't
that's
know
a
how many
long
years that is.
time.
That's a long time. Yes, yeah. So yeah, and a journalist, obviously, before that in the newsroom, just doing the grind, and yeah, it was wonderful. I loved every minute of it, mostly. Yes, yeah.
Mother of the nation.
Oh, I don't know where that came
Do you
from.
know where that came from?
No,
No.
I don't. I don't. I'm sure it was somebody poking the borax at me, but you know, it's it's been around for a while, and so I've gotten used to it, and maybe it's an honor.
I don't remember why you hang up. How did you just feel it was time to hang up your hat, or
No, there was a controversy over salary
oh,
for
that's
me,
right. Mm,
um, and towards the end of my career, and then it was the telly people said, right, well, we're not going to renew your contract, so that was fine,
wow.
and I
How old were
just
you then?
moved on. I was in my 50. I must have been about 54.
And did you feel that that had anything to do with
No, not at all. Not at all. Not really.
it? Mm,
I just think it was time for a change. I'd been there for a long time, and I was ready for a change, really,
yeah.
deep down, I think. And I'd always wanted to, I always knew that it was, your flavor of the month one minute and
Yes.
dance about the next. And
Yeah.
that's fine. And life has been wonderful, when it's true, when one door closes, another opens, and it's been very full interesting time for me since then.
That's great. What have you gone
Mm.
on to do? Because you have um, 4 children, am I right?
Three
3 children,
children and seven grandchildren,
which is
and
quite busy. Mm.
very busy because they're all in Auckland, and we see a lot of them. And there's another one on the way, which is
Oh,
fabulous. So
that's
we're
exciting.
very excited about that.
Yeah.
Very, very excited because we adore them, of course, as you do.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so we've been busy doing grandparenting duties, and both of us have been working. So yeah, writing
That's
and whatnot.
And because in your book, actually, there's more that you talk about. You talk about the loneliness, the anxiety, and the depression that can raise their heads. Not that it's a depressing book by any
Mm,
stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of joy in there, but those are things that can come up as we grow older. And
mm,
I thought there was a statistics in there that I've memorized actually, because you said it was found that Asians experience more loneliness, and Pacifica experience less, which goes back to that
mm.
community and relationship, doesn't it?
Yes,
Mm,
yes. This was some research out of Dunedin, I think.
right.
Yeah. So Pacifica are so renowned for having a wonderful family network support around them. And I think maybe the Asian community, because a lot of Asian people are relatively new immigrants to
Mm,
New Zealand, that
mm,
they maybe lack that um, scaffolding around them.
mm.
Um, but loneliness is a huge problem. It's actually more damaging to our health than obesity or
Yes, and smoking, they
smoking.
say.
Yeah,
Mm, mm,
and they say it's more damaging than smoking 15 cigarettes a day,
mm,
which is pretty damaging.
mm.
So, so it's something that we really need to get on top of, and it's kind of easier said than done, I think,
Yeah. Mm,
because it's a very real problem for a lot of people. And I think that it's up to society to really look out for these people and try to include as much as possible, and create opportunities for lonely people to gather and be included in the community. Mm.
mm. Because then you lead into grand friends, which is
Yes.
a beautiful
Isn't it a wonderful
initiative.
idea? I
Mm,
think it's a wonderful idea. This is an organization that partners older people with young families who don't have any grandparents around for one reason or another. And it just is a really beautiful way of killing two birds with one stone, really, I think. I think there are
yeah.
a lot of older people who really love being around children, and enjoy the contact with younger people. And maybe their family lives overseas, or they don't have any family, or whatever reason, and they have the time and the energy to devote to another family, which is great idea, I think.
Oh, it's magic, isn't it?
I could certainly have done with, a wise person standing by my side
Mm.
as the kids were very little, because both our parents lived. Chris's were in Christchurch and mine were in Wellington, so yeah,
Oh,
no
really?
family
Mm,
support.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need that support, don't
Oh,
you?
you really do. You
Mm,
really, really do. It's nothing
mm,
like it.
mm.
And because it's that sort of non-judgmental, um, just good somebody there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Relationship
Yes.
again.
Again. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to speak with you about, because your hair just looks beautiful.
Oh,
Because
raggedy.
you've no, not at all. You've
Uh,
grown it longer, and
yeah.
you do go into style and makeup and hair in your book. And I love that because I hear quite often, and I come from a beauty background
Oh,
actually before I worked with the wellness field. And so many women say to me that they feel invisible now. And
yeah.
you actually have a statistics for that in your book too, something like 20% feel invisible, I think you stated. I would have thought it would be
More
more.
than that. I know.
And
I
it begins in the shops.
Yeah, I came across that comment so often
Did
when
you?
I spoke to people. Yeah, um, and I just think that you want to still feel fresh and well dressed, and you don't want to kind of slip into the old crimpling. I don't know, not crimpling anymore, is
No.
it? Whatever. But I just think that's because your body shape changes
Yes.
inevitably with the onset of sarcopenia,
Yes.
which is that kind of slight loss of muscle tone and bone density, which starts actually, in your 30s. Don't want to depress you, but
Yes.
and so your body shape changes, and you don't quite. It's hard to find clothes that make you feel good, you know, for your body shape, and so yeah. I've been very lucky to have wonderful stylists at the telly who looked after me, and so I drew on her advice um, for that chapter, and on the advice of my wonderful daughter-in-law, who is a makeup artist for
Yes, I said
film.
that. That's
So
nice.
yes, yes, so yes, bit of nepotism there.
That's all good.
It's
People
all
just
good.
love it. And your hairdresser as well.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Mm,
she's a great encourager of the grey
mm.
movement. she,
But
to
it
her
does.
detriment, probably, because I was spending a small fortune um, dyeing my hair, uh, probably every 3 weeks or so, and then I decided, look, it's really time for me to go grey and just embrace it, and it's so liberating, Jenna. I
Is
find.
it? It suits you. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
I love the silver sister movement because,
Mm,
you know, it can look so beautiful. Mm,
mm, mm.
mm.
Well, I just think when you're in your 70s, there comes a time. So I think I resisted it for a long time.
Well, you
Mm,
did well because I don't think, and that's what I love too. I think some women feel like they need to give up, but you
mm,
don't, do you?
mm.
There's a true beauty in aging. And
Yeah,
like you are talking about Andy McDowell and Jamie Lee Curtis and so many of these beautiful women
strong
are,
women as well.
yes,
Oh, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
are embracing it and showing how there's
They look
a
amazing.
beauty in aging, don't
Mm,
they? Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I always think about Audrey Hepburn when I think about
Yeah.
beauty, because she was just the classic, gorgeous, gorgeous
Wasn't she?
woman,
Mm.
and she just allowed herself to age
Yes.
gracefully, and she was really covered in wrinkles, but her face was just gorgeous
Wasn't it?
um, with
Mm.
those wrinkles.
Mm.
It just I I don't know. Maybe it sounds a bit trite, but it's that beauty within. I think that we need to remember. That beauty within us that kind of shines through. I think you
And
need
she
to
was a
remember.
big proponent of that because she had
Mm,
that quote. I can't remember it now, but it is to
mm.
do with
Yes,
the
yes,
beauty of a woman.
as in her eyes.
Mm.
and her thoughts and deeds and what. Oh, yes.
Mm.
Yes, I've actually used that. I've used that. I really agree with Claire Chambers, who has written a book about our obsession with youth and looks and a thing she calls shame-tenance, which is, what we
Oh, yes.
indulge in private to keep ourselves looking flash. and and she says that our obsession with looks is a real public health issue. And this obsession is starting earlier and earlier, and it's not good. It's not good for our mental health, and it's not a good message to send to, I don't think, to our daughters and granddaughters. Mm.
So, then you close off with a chapter on learnings. So, did you learn a lot in those 3 years? Um, Pulling together the book, you would have,
I
because there's so
did.
much research in it as well.
I did. And I think I also really like the idea, as we age, we move more from our interest in material things to a more kind of spiritual outlook on life, and we become more centered on our relationships, on the things that really matter. And I think that is a really wonderful part of aging. It's called gerotranscendence. It's a Swedish idea, and I think the Swedes do this really well. They also have a thing called death cleaning,
What?
which
Death
yes,
cleaning.
death
Oh,
cleaning, which is preparing, yourself um, in a sort of practical sense, like getting all your finances in order and getting rid of all the extraneous rubbish in your house, all the things that have collected over the years that don't mean anything
good
to
idea. Mm,
all of that sort of thing, and
mm.
just getting yourself in order. Really, I think very practical. Um, but the gerotranscendence is a really lovely idea, and it's we tend to become more reflective and more interested in our roots and where we've come from,
So true.
and I'm always thinking to myself, oh, I wished I'd asked my parents about this
Yes.
or that or the other. And so we're doing a lot of that sort of thing as well. And, but also looking, I think, to give back, to share some of the knowledge that we've had to support others who are going through tough times, or just trying to look outside of ourselves.
That's so nice.
Mm.
And didn't you say you were downsizing as well?
Yeah, we've downsized. We're decluttered. That's the thing. Not so much the downsizing, because we've got quite a large family,
Mm.
and they're always coming to stay, and so we need the rooms, but definitely, yeah, making life a little bit more simple.
Is there a book, apart from Evolving, of course, that has inspired you or motivated you that you'd recommend to others? I just find
Um,
there's this book loving thing going on, and when we share titles, it
yes.
sends
Well,
out
I
this
think
ripple effect.
yeah, definitely. There are books that inspired me on this journey with my book, and one of them was George Valent's Aging Well,
Okay.
and he was a former head of the Harvard study, before the current head, and Robert Waldinger. And that was a book that really inspired me and set me off on this journey.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
I read
Mm.
voraciously. Actually,
Yes.
I read all sorts of things. I'm reading a biography of Putin at the moment.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, trying to understand this man who seems to hold the world
Mm.
thrall at the moment. And I'm reading, and I'm also just reading novels to get myself, to sleep and just to relax. So I've just finished Kristen Hanna's The Women, which is about nurses in Vietnam.
Oh wow. Okay. Mm.
And what else? Catherine Chidley's The Axeman's Carnival, which
Mm.
is a New Zealand book, and it's fabulous. I really,
Is it?
really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's about a magpie.
Oh, interesting.
It's really interesting, actually. It's very interesting. She's inside the head of this magpie. It's such an original book. That's not the whole story, but it's a page turner. Mm.
Oh, thank you. I'll look that out. So, thank you so much for joining us today. It's just been a pleasure,
Oh, thank
and
you, Jenna.
for creating this book that I think will help so many people because I don't think there are many books out there that address all of these issues, are there?
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know of any, but um, I hope that people will find something in the book that resonates with them, and it might cause them to go on and do a bit more research and find out a bit more. But yeah, a lot of people have said to me, these are things I kind of knew some of it, but I needed reminding, and also there's a lot of new information in there. So yeah,
Mm,
I hope
mm,
it's useful.
mm. I'm sure it will be, and I'll put all the details in the show notes for everyone as well.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Jenna. It's been such
you.
a delight to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women on Fire. If you like what we share, please subscribe and give us a rating and or a review. In addition, visit our sponsor's YouTube channel at MenoMe 100, where you can subscribe and watch all of the interviews. That's the best way to support this podcast so we can continue to bring it to you. Thank you for your interest in midlife, menopause, and women on fire.